We're here again after a while. I haven't made any new videos on our ongoing commentary on the Gospel of Mark. I've been doing daily videos for Radio Maria Peru in Spanish, and I guess I'll have to get my energy level up a little bit to do 2 videos a day. We left off last time, session 24 rather, uh, in chapter 4 of Mark at verse 20, where Jesus explains the parable of the sower. And now we want to do the rest of chapter 4, trying to find a nice stride here where it's not too technical and it's technical enough to sort of do my biblical approach to this. And there's basically 2 main sections to what we're looking at today. The first are some sayings of Jesus regarding the lamp that should shine. He doesn't have the you are the light of the world, salt of the earth. I don't think that Matthew has in the Sermon on the Mount. So that the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew shows a lot of signs of stylization or redaction, etc. Let's not get into that too much now, but these are sayings about and with a Markan touch, by the way, it says, nor is anything secret except that it will come to light. And I've been reading N.T. Wright, his book on the resurrection, and he discusses Mark. And of course, the word secret and the word Mark go hand in hand. There's actually something called the secret Gospel of Mark that we don't want to get into now. But certainly, Mark was famous for this so-called messianic secret, which I think, along with Martin Hengel, it's really the Son of God secret. Son of God being the ultimate sort of Trinitarian nature of Jesus, implicitly in this gospel. So that when we see these things about secrecy, it is part and parcel of this gospel's approach, which is that no one can really understand Jesus until he's finished on the cross, and the centurion then, for the first time, a human being without the preternatural knowledge of the demons or God the Father's knowledge or Jesus' own consciousness or the narrator, for the first time a human being can understand really who Jesus is, or at least know who he is, and then maybe you'll have to deepen that understanding of what Son of God in the case of Jesus ultimately means. And in fact, the first section that we're looking at, which begins with this verse 21 and will end with verse 34, it'll be a reference to that he did not speak to his disciples except in parables, or rather, he didn't speak except in parables, and then he would explain it privately to the disciples. And so we're going to see this a little bit, and then we'll talk about the calming of the sea, which I think is very, very interesting. So that these sayings are sort of put together um, regarding your generosity. The measure you use is the measure that was going to be used for you, and even more will be added, and then the no in between type of philosophy. If you have, you'll get more, and if you're lacking even that little, will be removed, sort of as if tepidity, lukewarmness, this middle wishy-washy ground, ambivalent, ambiguous, that doesn't stand. You have to really decide, and certainly this gospel is a very abrupt gospel. He continues with another parable of the kingdom of God, like a man who scatters seed on the ground. And again, secretly, he sleeps and rises night and day, and the seed sprouts and grows. We already spoke a little bit about the Messiah as sprout last time in texts from Zechariah and Jeremiah, especially Jeremiah 23. Zemah, a Hebrew word for sprouting, which refers to is applied to the Messiah. Here you have a sprouting and growing. He knows not how. So again, you have this secret fermentation, this secret growth of a planted seed that then all of a sudden ripens and is producing fruit, etc., is very visible. N.T. Wright is discussing quite a bit the resurrection body and Paul's analogies in 1 Corinthians 15 about the different kinds of seeds and plants and heavenly stars, etc. He continues with what can we compare the kingdom of God, or what parable shall we use for it? Like a mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds. So here you have some sort of a paradox. The smallest seed produces the largest of the garden plants or of the trees, depending on how you want to translate this. All the vegetables or plants. And of course, we have other biblical passages that are parallel to this. A big tree that grows in Ezekiel 17, 22. Let me look at that one. Ezekiel 17, 22. And I think Daniel has something similar. Ezekiel 17, 22. He says that I will plant on that mountain. I will plant on the mountain of Israel my people, and I will, it'll be so huge that all kinds of birds will dwell in its shadows, etc. I'm looking at some of my notes here, and the words they're using, like yonek, for these, twigs and such, is found in Isaiah 53. We can get into this whole agricultural thing with words like root or tender twig, branch, all these other kinds of vegetative symbols, which would be very interesting to explore. I don't think I'm prepared to do too much of that right now. But continuing then with the conclusion to this first part that we're dealing with at the end of chapter 4, with many such parables he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. So this whole topic of the fact that not everything can be understood right away, there's a process, an evolution, etc. He did not speak to them without a parable, but privately to his disciples, he explained everything. So you have this ongoing secret type of idea. And again, I've described the gospel, I guess many others have too, as the tip of the iceberg that you can submerge yourself, scuba dive, so to speak, and discover what is really lurking beneath the surface. So now we'll get to the calming of the storm, which is a very interesting episode uh, that I have looked at a little bit. And so they are on a boat, which, by the way, you may know that a boat from the time of Jesus, the very same sort of kind of boat, fishing boat that he would have used, was actually taken out of the Sea of Galilee in a very sort of mushy condition, and the Israeli scientists preserved it, etc. And it actually, as I was told in class, it actually shows where Jesus might have had a space to recline himself during this trip that he's sleeping, so that he goes on the boat and a great storm arises. Now remember that that the sea in Judaism and in other ancient uh, countries is a place of chaos and disorder. Specifically in the Bible, sea monsters lurk in it, etc. And in the beginning, God's Spirit was hovering over the waters in Genesis. But at the end, in the book of Revelation, sea will be no more. And you could even capitalize sea in Hebrew, yam. It goes back to the Ugaritic pre-Israelite culture. It's almost like a deification of a force that has to be tamed, that is in struggles, etc. Right? River is also sometimes that same kind of force. And so, what's interesting here is that Jesus is sleeping, asleep on a cushion. It's a very realistic image, according to this boat that was excavated from the sea, from the bottom of the Sea of Galilee. And they wake him and they say, "Do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the sea. And if this uh, Bible, this accordance doesn't have a great dictionary as far as possibilities. The actual word is really muzzle yourself. And so Jesus is actually using the same rebuke or command to the sea that he used with the first possessed person in chapter 1, where he says, not so much be silent and come out of him, but rather muzzle yourself, as if it were a wild beast that would require a muzzle. And so I find that, quite remarkable. In Qumran, by the way, the Dead Sea Scrolls, there is a fragment of the Testament of Levi, who is, this is a writing of the expansions of Jacob's blessings to the 12 sons, in turn gives place to the blessings of each of the 12 sons to their sons. And Levi, of course, being the priestly tribe, is going to bless his sons. And it's a very, very interesting eschatological priest passage. Just like in chapter 1 of Mark, the holy, I know you are the Holy One, that is the Holy One of God, that is a priestly appellative in Psalm 106. But here in the Testament of Levi, this version of the Dead Sea Scrolls says, he will make the sea be quiet. So you have a double link here. A priestly person, Jesus, is telling the demoniac to muzzle himself. And here Jesus is making the sea be quiet, which is parallel to what the Testament of Levi says is one of the things that the eschatological priest at the end of time will do. And finally, since we're running out of time, what I really find interesting, if you look at Isaiah 51, Isaiah 51 is an eschatological plea to Yahweh to awaken, to awaken, and to clothe himself with power, the holy arm of Yahweh, like in the Exodus, upright, uplifted arm, etc. Awaken as in the days of old, in generations past. Are you not the one who split Rahab, sea monster, and who pierced Dragon, another mythological sea monster? Aren't you the one who dried up Yam, sea, the Red Sea, Sea of Reeds, and the waters of the great ocean, which is Tehom, which is the same word as this, the deep of Genesis 1, creation type language. And it continues with the redeemed of Israel, and pain and suffering will go away, etc. Find it a remarkable parallel that Yahweh is told to wake up and tame sea, which is equivalent to salvation in Isaiah 51:9, eschatological end of time salvation. And here in Mark 4, Jesus is awakened literally and rebukes the sea with an exorcism type command. And then everything is still leading to the question, who is this secret who even the wind and the sea obey? Of course, with a call to faith. And I'll end on that note.